In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read ancient tomes, the order of the Abercast. We are the brave and bold.
The Ages begins with the shocking story of Cain and Abel and the journey of violence and revenge spanning thousands of years, following Cain through his cursed life from an ancient invasion of malicious angels to the American Revolutionary War. A masterful, compelling journey through time, The Ages delves deep into arcane knowledge, myth, and legend. The art is stunning, and the story takes you on a journey where mortals, immortals, angels, and demons are all forced to deal with the folly that is God's creation. It's a beautifully dark and gritty ride through history. This 4-part story follows the astrological procession of the ages and how each 2,500-year age parallels major changes in the development of Earth's inhabitants. Cain's blasphemous struggle with the divine and sacred tyrant God will create and crumble empires, shape history, and cause a cosmic cataclysm.
We come from the land of the ice and the snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs flow. Hammer of the gods will drive our ships to new land, to fight the hordes and sing and cry, Valhalla, I am coming. Always sweep with threshing oar, our only goal will be the western shore. We come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot spring flows. How soft your fields so green can whisper tales of Thor, of how we calmed the tides of war. We are your overlords. Always sweep with the threshing oar. Our only goal will be the western shore. So now you'd better stop and rebuild all your ruins, for peace and trust can win the day despite all of your losing.
Ah! Bam! Ooh! Ah!
Pump it up, pump up, get the energy level up. Up it, bring it, fucking bring it.
Mother with an evil slant. I am the boogeyman with the chop in my hand.
The Abercast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. Violence.
All right, fellow overlords, welcome to Abercast. I'm gonna start out today by saying that we're actually not gonna have any triggers today, unless you're like a fucking Viking. You're not gonna have any. I don't think we're gonna have any problems. So, I'm a huge Marvel guy, and the Thor 3 Ragnarock trailer dropped the other day, and it's a fantastic trailer. However, that is not the Ragnarok we're going to be talking about tonight. I've always been into myths and mythology. I remember as a kid having like Greek myths and stories read to me, and I remember very vividly when the original Clash of the Titans hit HBO, because my grandparents were the only people I knew that had HBO, and I was over there all the time watching the Krakens. As I got a little bit older, I never really played D&D, but I was obsessed with the manuals. I was obsessed with the data and the statistics. I don't know, which is weird because I'm not good at math. But a friend of mine's dad was big into D&D, so I had like the monster manual and like the encyclopedia or the guidebook for like the planes and other dimensions and stuff. But I would go over to my friend's house and we would read his dad's D&D books, and I remember he had a one that was like, it was all about like the pantheons of the different gods and stuff. So it's like a section of the book was like all the stats and bios and stuff for like the Egyptian pantheon, and one was like all the stats and stuff for the Greek pantheon, so you could read about like Heracles and Zeus and whatnot. And that one of the coolest things about that book is that book introduced me to H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos, because they actually had a section in there about Cthulhu, and it broke down like the old ones and like the deep ones and the Cthulhu and what a Yog Sothoth was, and just all of that weird, wild shit. And I remember I became obsessed with the book, and every time I went over there, like I had to like dig through it and stuff. You can find it online now. You can download the PDF for nothing, which you know I have. But yeah, the different pantheons and stuff, and you know, because of I was raised literally with comics and TV were like my parents, basically. Like they were like I learned how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at an early age. I was like a latchkey kid, like when I was like 6. It was the fucking 70s, you know. So I have always been interested in Thor and the Norse mythos, the mythos of the Northmen. In the 80s, when it was kind of like my heyday for comics, a great writer and artist named Walt Simonson had this huge run on Thor, and I believe he wrote it and he inked it, if not penciled it too. And his style so awesome. Like it was a huge, still is a huge, inspiration on me. So I think that when you look at some of my work, I think that you could see some Walt Simonson in there. And I love that. He also did a long run on, X Factor. Where he used a lot of the same kind of stuff. So it's like cool. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like he has this weird fluidity with metal and texture, you know, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and fucking analyze it because this is going to be a long one anyways. But, yeah, Walt Simonson was a huge inspiration. He was married to Louise Simonson, who was one of the writers on the Death of Superman thing. Again, one of the big points of the 90s, really. And he helped with some of the art on that too. So Walt and Louise Simonson, huge inspiration on me. Huge, gigantic. I can't even fucking explain it. So a lot of today's research can be found in a YouTube video called Norse Legends, and audio book called In the Days of Giants by Abby Farwell Brown. If you haven't guessed already, what we're going to do is you're going to mix yourself up a Jin Jihad. You're gonna stir it up with whatever enchanted melee weapon you have laying nearby, because tonight I'm going to tell you the story of the Twilight of the Gods. We're going to talk about Ragnarock, and not the Thor one, not the Thor movie one, like the for real Ragnarok. When I was at the trailer looking at the trailer for the movie, I'm like, this is really cool and it's awesome, and I like the weird 80s kind of vibe to the typography and stuff, but it didn't really look like it had a whole lot to do with the Ragnarok that I know and love. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at the beginning, the creation myth of the Norse mythology, because in order to understand some of the stuff that happens at the end, you kind of have to know what's going on at the beginning. You know, like in Revelations, like there's virtually nothing from Genesis in there. Like they're talking about like dragons and shit, and there's literally, they're like, oh, but it's the same thing. It's this snake, this talking snake, but it doesn't, like the stuff from the beginning of the story echoes all the way through, and in some cases very literally comes back and makes a fucking return. So we're going to spend a little bit of time doing a background and getting some of the creation of the universe stuff out of the way, and then we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it deep. How deep? Like elbow deep. We're going to get into it elbow deep right after this. The creation of the universe. In the beginning, there was only the Gununga Gap. It was a great void, unending, maddening emptiness. It was vast and chaotic. There was no up. There was no down. There was no east. There was no west. There was no light, nor was there dark. The Gununga Gap was silent. Ages before our world came into being, two different and distinct lands came into being. The land of fire, which is called Muspelheim, and Niflheim, which is the land of ice and snow. Muspelheim, which is the land of the destroyers of the world, is a land of fire, and had a burning sky, volcanic lava and ash, scorched, burning earth. Nothing lived in Muspelheim except for the fire demon Surt, the first being. He would spend ages forging his flaming sword. It was the weapon that he would use at Ragnarock to destroy the world. This dude's serious about his craft. He spent from like day one of creation till Ragnarok forging this flaming sword. In Niflheim was the land of ice and snow. The cold northern wind never stopped blowing, driving ice and freezing rain across the desolate earth. It's like Pittsburgh in the middle of winter sometimes. All the water came from Niflheim. In Niflheim, there was a river called Agar, which filled the seas of Niflheim, but it wasn't pure. Agar was polluted by numerous streams of black poison that corrupted the waters and formed black ice and black glaciers, like steel, like a teeth of a steel trap. This corruption would have dire consequences in the ages to come, as it has tainted the Gununga Gap and things that were to follow. Countless ages pass, and in time the lands of fire and ice meet. And in a great explosion fills the Gununga Gap. The ashes of Muspelheim meet the cascading waters of Niflheim and form a sort of clay that comes together, forming a massive body of a giant that lay lifeless for many, many more ages. This giant's name is Organamir, first of the mountain giants. After years, the snow, clay, fire, ash, and the corrupted black waters from Agar mixed and compounded within Organmir. he started to sweat, and out of each of his armpits, a man and a woman were born. These were to be the first of the frost and mountain giants. His feet mated with each other and bore out a 6-headed dragon. So all kinds of weird stuff is going on with this guy. Meanwhile, across the Ginunga Gap, another being was born from a mixing of fire and ice. A great cow named Adumala. She was born without the inclusion of the corrupt black waters of Ilivegar. Only the pure snow and fire created her. There was no grass to graze or hay to eat, so Adumala fed herself by licking the ice, and soon she uncovered a being inside the ice. And on the third day of licking, she uncovered Buri, who is the father of the gods. Buri gave birth to a son named Bor, and in time Bor and his giant wife gave birth to a son named Odin. He actually had 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. And they actually went on kind of like a crusade against giants. They attacked the first giant, the big guy that I was just talking about. He's also known by another name. I think it's like Ymir. These 3 gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve, killed this giant god, or this giant frost giant, or whatever kind of giant. And with the corpse, they created dwarves, and they created the world. They used his skull as the dome. They're creating Midgard. They're using the skull as a dome to create the sky, and his crushed up teeth to create rocks and sand, and his eyebrows to create great like buttresses to hold the dome up, and his blood to fill the ocean. And this is weird. Like, you see this over and over again with these sky gods in other mythologies too. Hold on. With these sky gods, well, they will kill their enemy and create the world out of them. You see it in Marduk and Tiamat from Samaria, and in certain Kabbalistic texts, you see it with God and Leviathan, where God pretty much creates the earth, and he doesn't know he's created a living being, but what he actually did is he created a gigantic fish monster. With scales like shields and claws like harpoons, and knives and swords, and he's got to kill this fucking thing because it's aggressive, and it was just a total accident. That's why when you read the Ages, Cyrus, the ever-living rebel Cyrus the Dead Guy, he in a few spots in the book, he talks about God always fucking everything up, not being able to do anything right. So yeah, you see this thing of where like the sky god has to kill his enemy to create the land where man would dwell. And then actually Odin and Loki and somebody else goes to create humans, and they create humans out of trees. An oak and an ash tree, and like Odin breathes on them, and they become human, and then somebody else touches them, and they can see, and then Loki touches them, and they could speak. So that's how humans are born. This is all not even in my notes. So we're gonna move on to the next phase. In my little lesson plan here, we're going to talk about the Golden Age of Asgard. The Golden Age of Asgard. Even more ages pass, and Yggdrasil, the world tree, grows, and the rest of the 9 realms come to be. It was the golden age of the gods of Asgard. There was Odin, the Allfather, powerful sky god. He wore an eye patch over one eye, ever looking inwards for introspection. There was Thor, the red-haired god of thunder, with his mighty warhammer Mjolnir always in hand. His wife was Sif, Thor's blonde wife and goddess of the wheat fields. There was Vidar, the mysterious and silent maker of a magical boot to use for Ragnarok. It was called the Perfect Boot. Heimdall, the guardian of Asgard, who took a post on the Bifrost Bridge, that's the Rainbow Bridge, and let no one pass except for those who belonged. He will be the one to raise the alarm at the beginning of Ragnarok. There was Tyr, the war god, son of Odin. It was said that he will have to make a brave sacrifice before Ragnarok. And there was Baldur, the shining god. Odin, he was one of Odin's sons. He was loved by all things in the Nine Realms except for the evil god Loki. The Norns once prophesied that he would be slain in an act of treachery, and that this would start Ragnarok. Frigga made all things swear to not hurt Baldur, so he couldn't be slain. By fire, by stone, by metal, by all things, except one. There was Hodor, the blind god, and then there was Loki, the god of mischief and evil, whose offspring became the bane of Asgard. His offspring consisted of, but not limited to, Fenrir, a giant wolf, Jomorganda, the world serpent, who circles Midgard. He's the sworn enemy of Thor. He circles Midgard because in order to stop his growth, Odin made him eat the end of his own tail. So you see like this, everyone knows it now, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. This is what he did to the world serpent to keep him from growing. He won't stay like that for very long, though. Or at least not until the end. And then there was Hel, the queen of the underworld. The denizens of Hell were mercilessly tortured with venomous snakes and rivers of blades and swords. When they are not being tortured, they are put to work building they're building a fleet of black long ships of death that will be sailed by their captain at the end of time at the time of the end, the Ragnarok, to attack Asgard. Next, we're going to move into the stuff that the stuff that precipitates this time of the end. We're going to talk about the two things, the two events that kick off the Ragnarok and roll. Right after this. The death of Baldur, or Baldur and the Mistletoe. Baldur was loved by everyone, and because of an ancient prophecy, everything in the Nine Realms promised to do no harm to Baldur, except the mistletoe. Frigga, what she did is, he had a dream, or the Norns prophesized that he was going to die, and that was what was going to start off Ragnarok. So Frigga, who's the mother of all things, went to the essence of each thing on Earth and made it in the world, in the Nine Realms, and made it promise to not harm Baldur. The only thing that she skips was this mistletoe, and it's because this mistletoe was small. It was just a sprig. It was a young sprig. She figured, what's the harm that mistletoe could do? So she did not solicit mistletoe to this promise. Because of his invulnerability, we'll put that away. We'll come back to it later. It's a small sprig for sure, but it's going to cause Ragnarok. because of his invulnerability, a sport developed amongst the gods of Asgard, where they would practice throwing their weapons at Baldar, only to have them harmlessly bounce off. All the gods participated in this game, all but one, Hodor, the blind god. He was feared that if he would throw his weapons, he could actually accidentally hurt someone, because he was blind. He couldn't aim. However, Loki was jealous of Baldur. He was envious of his looks and his ability, and the fact that everyone loved him. Baldur, he's kind of a weird Viking character because he was always happy. They called him the Shining One. They also called him the White God. I did not refer to him that in my notes because it sounds kind of racist. But yeah, he couldn't be hurt by everything but one thing. And like everyone loved him. Even they go out of their way to explain that even the giants and the people, even like the jerks, liked Baldur because he never did anything bad to them. So he's kind of like Parker Lewis. I don't know if you guys know who that is. But Loki, using dark sorcery, discovered what Baldur was not invulnerable to: mistletoe. Loki devised a plot. He made a poison of the mistletoe. He carved it into a sharp stick, and he poisoned the tip of the spear. And he attached the mistletoe onto a tip of a spear, and he tricked the blind god Hodor to join in on this sport. And Loki guides Hodor's throw, and the spear hit and killed Baldur. Actually, the kids and stuff that were playing around him, which is weird, like he lets people throw stuff at him when there's kids and stuff around, but they all thought he was kidding. Like this was such like a thing that they did. And it was normal. Like when he fell down and was like, "Oh, fuck my life," they all thought he was he was kidding around. But then he actually was fucking dead. So there's that. Odin figured out before anybody else that this meant more than just the death of his probably favorite kid. And he was like, "Oh man, this is how Ragnarock's supposed to start, is when this fucking kid dies, when Baldur dies." So he went to the underworld and he asked Hel to release Baldur. And Baldur, he now sat on the throne at Hel's side. Hel was like, "You got to jump through a bunch of fucking hoops. Like I'm just not gonna let him go." But like I like the guy too. I actually like him so much. He's like my king now or whatever. But she agreed because of this Ragnarok thing that if you could make every living thing in the 9 realms cry for Baldur, I'll let him go. And it was easy to do. They all rode off in their separate like directions, like Thor. It's really ridiculous. Like especially if you know like the Marvel Comics Thor, but like this other Thor, like the real mythological Thor was like a dope. And he was like quick to act, and he was kind of stupid, and he rode around in a cart drugged by 2 goats. Like, it doesn't really paint a flattering picture of our hero, but yeah. So he goes off in his goat cart. Odin saddles up his 8-legged horse. I can't remember what the horse's name is, but it's actually weird because it's a son of Loki. Like Loki was hiding out as a girl horse and got knocked up and gave birth to an 8-legged horse, and Odin was like, "I want that horse," and he made Loki's kid into his charger, his war horse. Anyhow, so they all go their separate ways, and they're telling everyone, like, "Hey, will you shed some tears for Baldur? Because if everyone can shed a tear for him, we could buy his life back." And everyone did, except for this old crone Thorak. Thorak wouldn't shed a tear. She was like, "Let Hel do what Hel's gonna do with him. What's he to me?" Meanwhile, that guy Thorak was actually Loki in disguise. So eventually, she declined to release Baldr. Odin was sad because he knew that this would bring about Ragnarock. And he was furious because he knew that Baldr's murder was an act of the vile and evil Loki. So Thereth ends that. Then we're going to get into the next, the last precursor to the actual story that we're trying to tell here. So we'll be right back after this. Okay, so we're moving into the section called Loki's Punishment. So after Baldr's death, the gods of Asgard changed. They knew that the summer of Asgard was over, and the winter of Ragnarok fast approaches. There was no laughter, and their faces grew grim with hard lines. Loki had doomed them all with his act of treachery. Thor caught Loki. This is actually like a huge, long story. I didn't put in the notes, but he was like, Loki invented fishing nets. And he was like in his castle, tying together a fishing net. And when he saw the gods rolling up on his castle, he turned himself into a salmon and went and hid in a pool of fresh water. And Thor and it's like a buddy movie. It's like a buddy cop movie. Like Thor and Heimdall bust into his castle, and they're like looking in the fire, and they're like, "This fire just went out. Like this fucker was just here. This motherfucker is still in the vicinity." And Heimdall was like, "What is this in the fire?" And he like pulls out like part of this net that Loki was inventing, and it was like all burned up, but he still had a portion of it. And he was like, "I can deduce what this is." And Thor is like, "Duh, really? What do you think it is?" And Heimdall was like, it smells like fish. Like, he uses this stuff. It's brilliant. He was a clever fellow. And he sews a net together, and he uses it to fish. He can net many, literally net. He can catch many fish with this instead of just one fish with a spear or a fishing line. So they all sit down in the circle, and they all recreate this fishing net. And then they go down to the pool of fresh water, and they start dragging the water. And they realize that the net doesn't go all the way to the bottom because it's too light. So they're like, "We got to tie some rocks to this fucking thing." So they tie some rocks onto it, and they throw it. But at this time, Salmon Loki was able to like swim downriver, but he swam too far downriver, and he started in salt water, and he was like, whoa, I can't breathe in the salt water. I got to go back. So he goes back, and he winds up getting caught in this net, and Thor reaches down and grabs him, and he's all wriggling or whatever. He's trying to, I don't know if this is like why fish stream upstream, like the myth, but he like jumps in this waterfall, and Thor catches him, and he wrestles him out of the water, and then Loki's like, "I can't breathe because I'm in the air now, I'm not in the water," so he turns into Loki. So they fucking frog march him back to Asgard. And all, like, everything that wept for Baldr's death are, like, booing and hissing and throwing, like, tomatoes and shit at him as he walks by. And they're all, like, threatening to kill him. And Thor's like, no, we're not going to kill him because Odin wants him kept alive. Like, he's got some kind of punishment in mind for this fucking guy, and it's not going to be as easy as death. So, let's see. Okay, Thor... I just go off script sometimes. I don't know. I just go off my lesson plan. Thor caught Loki, and Odin gave him an eternal punishment. Loki was taken to the underworld and was chained to a rock. He was actually chained to 3 rocks that formed a really uneasy, not comfortable, jagged bed. He was chained on top of these rocks, and a poisonous serpent was hung above him, over his head. So the venom eternally dripped into Loki's eyes and tormented him until the end of time. That was the plan. The end of time part was the plan. After ages, eventually Loki broke his chains. He was driven mad by the pain and the poison, and he became captain of the fleet of Death's black long boats. And the Norns once prophesied, he would lead an army of the evil dead against the gods of Asgard once and for all. So I need to draw a kind of quick distinction here. I see a flaw in my notes, so I need to draw a quick distinction here real quick. So, if you think of the underworld, Hell, and the underworld's queen is also called Hel. So, there is this story. Hel's actually Loki's daughter, and Odin, for whatever reason, threw her off the tallest tower in Asgard, and she fell for 7 days and 7 nights, and she wound up in the underworld, and she was like, well, I'm queen of this shit now, I might as well just call myself Hel. So she called herself Hel. But as a lot of you know, or as some of you might know, there is also kind of like a heaven in Norse mythology, but it's not a heaven. It doesn't have harps and angels and wings and all this kind of stuff. It's called Valhalla. And what it is when you die honorably on the field of battle, there are these bad bitches that fly down on winged horses that will take you up to Valhalla, where you've earned your place. Valhalla, I'm coming, I sing and I cry. And when they go up to Valhalla, these warrior spirits, these souls. So these Valkyries, really, it's like they call them a psychocomp. What it is it's a being that mediates your soul's travel from Earth to the afterlife, whatever that may be. So it's funny, like the first one that pops to my fucking brain, because I have it primed with this Call of Cthulhu nonsense, or it's actually the Dunwich Horror. In the Dunwich Horror, H.P. Lovecraft's classic story, the Dunwich Horror, it's one of the big ones. Around the Wizard Whately's property are these I can't remember, there's some kind of bird, but whenever someone dies, these birds all just go fucking nuts, and what it is them like ferrying the soul of the dead or whatever onto the next thing. I know as soon as I stop recording I'm gonna remember it. It's not like a will-o'-the-wisp or something like that. It's like a bird. Anyhow, these Valkyries do the same thing. They fly once the battle is over and the dead and injured are bleeding out, limbless, fucking pools of blood up to your knees. They fly over the battlefield and they pick out the worthy ones, and they're like, yes, I'm going to bring you to Valhalla. What they do is they go up to Valhalla, and every day they battle to the death, and then every night they're resurrected so they can fucking party. It's like a Kiss song. It's like that Eddie Murphy song, My Girl Wants to Party All the Time, except it's like My Warrior Wants to Party All the Time. He's slashing and chopping and murdering fucking warriors on the battlefield, only to be resurrected in the night to drink sweet mead and eat meat until he passes out, and to do it all the next day. And this was heaven to these fucking people. Like, that is some crazy shit. It's like yeah, man, this is fucking where I'm at. Like, my heritage. I don't know if I have any North or Swedes or whatever in me, but this is what I'm feeling. So that's the difference. The underworld is where evil people with no honor go. Thieves, liars, murderers. They go to hell, Hell, and they become the souls that are gonna they're going to be the soldiers on the fleet of Death's black longboats. And likewise, these people, Odin's created Valhalla for these dead honorable warriors, because when Ragnarok rolls around, he's going to be like, yo, bros, you've all been trained more than anyone's been trained. You're all suffered death. You already know what's up. Like, come and help me fight this great wolf and this horde and these evil dead. It's actually like a brilliant piece of storytelling, and it's terrifying at the same time. So, Loki's going to steer this. He's going to captain this fleet against the gods of Asgard for once and for all. All right. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Ragnarok is preceded in Midgard by 3 years of widespread warfare. It'll be a sword time, a raven time, a time of wolves. Scratch that. It'll be a sword time, a raven time, a time the wolves grow fat on the corpses of the slain. After the war, Finnbull will come. Finnbull is a terrible winter that lasts all year long. Men that are not killed in the war will freeze or starve during Finnbull. A handful of men that are left will see literally something terrifying. They will see Fenrir, the great wolf, break his bonds and swallow the sun and the moon. And the stars will fall from the sky. Midgard will be torn to pieces by great earthquakes and volcanoes. Standing by watching, all the dwarves and elves will cry for pity, but nothing will stop the terrifying catastrophe. The Midgard serpent takes its tail out of its mouth and begins to splash and writhe, creating tidal waves to add to the chaos. Seems pretty terrifying. Earlier, I don't know if I mentioned they thought the land was surrounded by the ocean. I imagine that's why Midgard swims in a circle underneath the water. So if he starts writhing and stuff, what you're gonna get is like tidal waves and crazy seismic activities. Fingir and Jormungandr go before the fleet of the black longboats, polluting and scorching Asgard. Here it comes, man. It's fucking happening. Fill your drinking horn with gin and join me on this, telling this story. Muspelheim opens and fire giants attack, led by Surt, who carries the sword he made over uncountable eons since the very first day of creation. They smash and destroy the Bifrost Rainbow Bridge. As Heimdall blows the great horn, Jalahorn, to raise the alarm. The end is upon the gods of Asgard. The mountain, storm, ice, and fire giants all attack. Loki and his army of evil dead, and Fenrir and Jormungandr, the world serpent, join in, adding their strength to the attack. On the other side, in this corner, in that corner, all of the warriors and gods of Asgard answer Heimdall's call. Armies of Valkyries from Valhalla and their winged chargers leave the Great Hall to answer. Berserkers and armies of Iron Harriers join the gods. All the warriors that have been slaughtering and pigging out in Valhalla also answer the call. So here we go. Like this is it. The fucking hair on the back of my neck is standing up talking about this. All right. Heroes and villains clash. The slaying and dying begins. Odin battles the great wolf Fenrir. Thor fights storm giants looking for the Midgard serpent. Odin, laughing at his death, armed with his magic spear, charges at the great wolf. But he is crushed and eaten by his huge jaws. Thunder rolls and lightning splashes across the battlefield as Thor witnesses Odin's death. Evil giant after evil giant falls, pulverized by hammer, scorched by lightning, dead at the hands of the Thunderer, until Thor comes face to face with his sworn enemy, the Midgard serpent. Jormungandr, I know it's just degenerating as this thing goes, coils, crushing men and gods and horses, venom splashing across armies as thousands die, screaming in pain. Thor attacks the serpent, swinging his hammer. Mjolnir. I haven't named it yet, but that's what the fucking name is. Mjolnir. Singing his death song. Oh, I'm going to reread that because I undersold this. Thor attacks the serpent, swinging the hammer Mjolnir, singing his death song. The serpent rises up above Thor, maw open, ready to feast on his enemy. Thor swings the hammer, splits the sky, lightning crashes, and he crushes the serpent's skull, opening him up. Venom splashes the surrounding warriors, killing thousands. Drenched by the venom of the Midgard serpent, Thor turns and walks 9 steps and dies. Vidar, the silent god, takes his magical boot, the perfect boot, and kills Fenrir. Not after Fenrir, the great wolf, takes Tyr's arm. But we'll get to Tyr in a minute. Right? We'll get to Tyr in a minute. I fucking lost my momentum. He holds the jaws open and crushes his head by stomping on it with his magical boot as the wolf howls and screams. Vidar is burnt and killed by Surt, who is the first being, the fire demon. The one-handed Tyr, at this time, the god of war, kills an uncountable many giants and evil dead. He fights the mighty Gom, who is the dog, the great hound that protects hell, the underworld. So this guy, they would keep him locked up in chains. The way that it's described is like the opening to hell is like a gigantic cave, and they would just have this great hound chained on like many points. So think of like a dog in a cave, like on the cave with like, I don't know, we'll say 5 or 9 different points of chains like welded to his collar, like keeping him there. Because if they weren't there, if they couldn't keep him there, he would just run out and fucking do his shit, like fucking go and fuck stuff up. So they have these chains to keep him there. But apparently he got loose, or someone let him loose during this Ragnarok. because Tyre, the one-armed Tyre at this point, fights Golm, the dog that protects the underworld. Golm eats Tyre, but as Tyre is passing through the Great Hound's stomach, he eviscerates the dog, so the dog is also dead. The battle is winding down. Heimdall and Loki square off, and in battle, they are consumed by lightning and fire until they are reduced to just a pile of ashes. All are dead but Surt, the fire demon, who then lights a fire to everything. The whole of the 9 realms burn. And this is the way the world will end. Enough of that. Enough. So now we're going to talk about, we left the story in pretty dire straits. Surt, all the gods and their respective arch nemeses have destroyed each other. The armies of men and berserkers and valkyries and giants and trolls and dwarves and elves are dead. All the ogresses are dead. All of Loki's weird children are fucking dead. Everything is dead. The world, all 9 realms are scorched, burnt to the ground. By Surt. I guess he's the only one that lived, because they didn't say that he killed himself, so I imagine he just returned back to the land of fire and just was hanging out. But after the fires have gone out, everything is charred and covered with ash. However, there's still a spark of life in Yggdrasil, the world tree. It is becoming green again. I just imagine it's like all torched, but like just like one green, like fucking like little bud turns into a leaf, letting you know that there's like a spark of life left in the tree. Out of its damaged and hollowed out trunk emerge a naked man and a naked woman who had been hiding from the terrifying catastrophe, and they will go on to repopulate Midgard. I'm gonna hold my remarks until the end of this, so because I got a lot to say about this. Alone in hell, Baldar, because remember, hell's just for some reason Baldar's there because he didn't die in battle, but hell's filled with evil, duplicitous, sinister motherfucker killers that have no honor. And the queen, hell, is down there, but the dog is dead and not guarding the way in now. So he emerges from the underworld, and there's no longer anything there to hold him back. So he gets off his king throne, and he wanders back out and finds his way back home to what was once Asgard. And Baldar, now called Baldar the Redeemer, takes a high throne and becomes a new god for this new age. So here's what I have to say about this stuff. This specific part of it, part of the story, is I included it because it's actually important. Because like these stories were around for hundreds of years before anyone wrote them down, and no one actually wrote them down before they became. They were written down after these indigenous people of these regions became Christians. They were converted. So, like so many things that we talk about here on the Abercast, is a way to ease this conversion is to co-opt these previously held ideas or these previously held fucking like stories and stuff. So the way that this is bundled up, and by the time it's written down, is it's kind of like a prequel to the Bible. Like, the way that this story ends is like one God's left, whatever. And there's there's a tree and there's two naked people. And they're like, this is how it all started. Like, your shit was the old shit. This is the new shit. Imagine this is the same way that when Christianity took off, they used the Torah and the Judaism part as the prequel, and the New Testament's like the new shit. This is the new shit. Get up and sing. So I think it's very interesting that they were to go and do this, and it reminds me of like a old Twilight Zone episode where this astronaut fucking lands on this deserted planet, but he finds like one chick, and he's like, hey, by the way, what's your name? And she's like, I'm Eve, and he's like, hey, by the way, I'm Adam. And like, that's the way this Twilight Zone episode ends. It fucking ends like that. But yeah, that's what this always reminds me of. But but it's interesting. Like, it's interesting to where like the pretty boy becomes the redeemer. Like, he's suffered through, like, and he's lived through hell, like literally, and like the later kind of old new school kind of stuff of the New Testament. Where, especially, I mean, we're in the week of Easter, or I'm recording this at the week of Easter. You guys will hear it afterwards, but like, it's just weird how everything, it's all linked. It's all linked. It is all linked. I don't know if you know that. All right. So I want to thank you guys for listening. I had a real good week, looking at my numbers and stuff. So, if you guys know other weird people that might like these episodes, pass it along to them. That's all I'm asking. You get the show for free. I'm not forcing you to buy comic books. I'm not forcing you to pay for content. Like, just pass the news along to other weird people that you know and see what they think. They'll probably think you're pretty cool for passing along. Go to sigmatastudios.com. Go to indieplanet.us and search for the Stigmata Studio brand if you want some of the smaller books or older graphic novels. You go to Stigmata Studios on Twitter, Stigmata Studios on Instagram. The Abercast Facebook page, I've been posting a lot of fun videos up there regarding the episodes we're talking about. So if you guys are digging the shows and the topics, go there and find like the weird shit I'm digging out for you guys and throwing up there. I promise I'm going to do something with a newsletter this month. So if you want to join, the link is in the show notes. I'm going to do something fun. I promise. I swear to fucking God. I haven't sent a newsletter out in like 6 months, so I'm itching to do something fun. And like I said, it's not all crazy sales newsletter stuff. Like, I'm going to do something fun for everybody. If you're wondering what to listen to next, you can always go to society-13.com. Find tons of great shows there that you can listen to and have fun. They're not all like this. There's some sane ones that talk about real stuff. But look, I'm having a time of my life talking to you guys, and I can't wait to start hearing from people and stuff. So if you're digging the coverage of Ragnarock, let me hear you. There's also many different tellings because of the great oral tradition. Like I said, they didn't write this shit down until actually all these religions are pretty much dead. There's totally different versions. So you find some fun stuff that you want to bump up against my stuff and be like, that's not the way that I heard it. And I'll be like, yeah, let's do a dance off, son, or whatever. Like, I'm anxious to hear what you found out too. So yeah. Hook me up. Towers, TOWERS, Tango, Jesus, I can't believe I'm going to do this. Tango, Oscar, Whiskey, Echo, I can't remember what R is. RS as in Sierra 113 at gmail.com. Feel free to drop me an email. I haven't given that out this whole time yet, so here we go. If you guys want to support the show, buy some goddamn comic books.
Vienna, 1683. Today is September 11th, 1683. The mighty army of the Ottoman Empire, led by the savage and radical terror troops of the Dar al-Harb, surround the walled city of Vienna and begin a siege to break the golden apple of Europe and kill, enslave, or convert all of its inhabitants. The valiant citizens stand against the tyrannical army with the steadfast leadership of Count Ernst Rudiger von Stromberg, the help of the ever-living rebel Cyrus the Dead Guy, and the hopes of the faraway King Jan Sobieski III and his army of flying hussars. The Vienna 1683 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us. The Non-Standard Squad, 1944. World War II. 3 weird American soldiers are on a search and rescue mission into the oldest and darkest regions of Europe. A cursed, ever-living warrior, Cyrus the Dead Guy. An experimental warbot, Sergeant Lane McCord. An all-red axe, mysterious rogue with a demon-possessed arm come face to face with an army of magically corrupted machine-obsessed elves, a magic hammer-wielding Norse Ubermensch, and a Nazi wizard who is a member of the ancient Dark Order of the Shining Hexagon. The Non-Standard Squad 1944 comic is available right now from Stigmata Studios at stigmatastudios.com and on indieplanet.us.
Or pass the word along and let's pump this up. Pump up the volume, pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Dance, dance! This has been Ragnarock and Roll, Ragnarock and Roll. I've been your storyteller, John Towers, and I want to thank all of the Scandinavian, Viking, raiding, looting motherfuckers out there with sharp swords and hard dicks. And spiky horn helmets. I fucking love that shit. There. Is that it, really? Oh, fuck.